House Stark. The Starks are an ancient house, descended from Bran the Builder, a legendary figure during the Age of Heroes, who raised their ancestral home at Winterfell thousands of years in the past, as well as the wall itself. They are descendants from the First Men, and still follow some of their ancient traditions and the old gods of the forest. The Starks were kings of winters in the north for thousands of years from the Age of Heroes, possibly beginning with Bran the Builder himself. Ever since Bran constructed the wall, the Starks have been friends with the Night's Watch, and have manned the wall for thousands of years. The Night King, the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, is said to have been a Stark, among many possibilities. The Starks of Winterfell have also helped to repel major wildling invasions, such as when they and their Umber bannermen defeated the kings beyond the wall like the brothers Gendril and Gron, as well as Beorn the Bard, who both sired and fought a Stark. For several millennia, the Starks were not the uncontested kings of the North, but their primary antagonists, the Boltons of the Dreadfort, swore fealty some 1,000 years ago, ending their flesh-flaying ways. Meanwhile, King Jon Stark drove pirates from the White Knife, and the Wolf's Den was built at its mouth. This stronghold and the city which grew around it, White Harbour, was often granted to the sons and grandsons of the kings in the north, or other bannermen, before finally being granted to the Mandarys, a house exiled from the Reach and taken up in by the Starks. King Jon's son Rickard defeated the Marsh King and married his daughter, bringing the Neck into Winterfell's realm under the lordship of House Reed. The Karstarks were founded when Carlon Stark, brother to the reigning king, helped crush the revolt of the Boltons and was granted a keep for his service. Finally, the Mormonts were granted Bear Island when King Roderick Stark won it from the Ironborn in a wrestling match. The Starks also fought the Arryns of the Vale for the Three Sisters, eventually conceding control of the islands. Aside from the Karstarks, the Starks of Winterfell may have distant relatives elsewhere in the north, possibly in White Harbour and Barrowtown. The last Stark king of the north was Torrhen Stark, who submitted to Aegon the Conqueror at the end of the War of Conquest. Since that time, the Starks have held the north for the kings of the Seven Kingdoms as Wardens of the North. In more recent events, Lord Rickard Stark and his maester sought to further southern alliances by betrothing Rickard's heir Brandon to Catelyn Tully of Riverrun. Peter Baelish, a ward of Catelyn's father, loved Catelyn and challenged Brandon to a duel for her hand. Brandon won their duel, but did not kill him in concession to Catelyn's pleas. Meanwhile, Lyanna was betrothed to the Lord Robert Baratheon, who was infatuated with her from a distance. Lyanna, however, was not as blind in her love for Robert, and was fully aware of his less than honourable ways. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, after winning the tourney at Harrenhal, crowned her Queen of Love and Beauty, passing over his wife, the Dornish Princess Ilia. The exact nature of her relationship with Rhaegar is not particularly clear, but shortly thereafter she disappeared in Rhaegar's company, and Robert and her brother Brandon Stark believed that she had been taken against her will. Brandon was on his way to Riverrun to wed Catelyn Tully when he heard this news. He and 4 companions rode to King's Landing to seek her return, but both he and Lord Rickard were executed on the orders of the Mad King. Lord Jon Arryn refused to hand his ward Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon over to Aerys, demanding their heads, and civil war broke out. During its course, Eddard Stark honoured his late brother's betrothal to Catelyn Tully as part of an alliance to bring her house into the rebel fold. He was one of the principal commanders in the war, but had a falling out with Robert after he accepted the treacherous aid of House Lannister, and condoned the brutal murders of Rhaegar's wife, son and daughter, out of his hatred for the Targaryen prince. After the sacking of King's Landing, Eddard and 6 companions went to retrieve Lyanna at the fortress Rhaegar had named the Tower of Joy. They fought 3 Kingsguard's knights stationed there, who killed all but Eddard and Howard Reed. Eddard found Lyanna dying in a bed of blood. She forced him to make a promise to her, the contents of which are unknown, but which haunted Eddard for the rest of his life. She was 16 years old at the time of her death, and was buried in the Stark family crypt in Winterfell beside her father and brother. Ned and Robert reconciled in their shared grief, but Ned still disdained in the court since Robert married Cersei Lannister and allowed her brother Jaime to remain a Kingsguard, even after the slaying of his liege. Ned returned from the war to be presented with his trueborn son, Robb, but he carried the infant Jon Snow, whom he presented to be his bastard son. 6 years later, Ned helped his foster brother, Robert Baratheon, crush the Balon Greyjoy's rebellion, taking Theon Greyjoy as a ward of Winterfell. Lord Rickard Stark's youngest child, Benjen, Eddard's brother, joined the Night's Watch, eventually becoming First Ranger. Eddard ruled the North in Robert's name, keeping distant from the intrigue-ridden, Lannister-infested politics of King's Landing.